Hello, welcome to Skittle Donors. Here's our game. Just gonna run through it with you guys really quick. Called Chroma Quest. We have a start button, we have an exit button, and we have a load button. Go ahead and press start, and it logs us in right here. This is our character. As you can see, the movement animation. We have a tutorial manager right here. Move with WASD. If I move right, I stay right. If I move left, I move left. Same with up and down. We can also move diagonally as well. Here we have our NPC. You can speak to that NPC using E. And here's our dialogue monitor at the very bottom. We have mentor, and we have a close-up image of him that we were very proud of. Let's go through it. As soon as you finish this, the next step is to go outside, which is going to be where this carpet is. But first, before we do that, here is our pause menu. Just press P to resume and to pause. And here are the boundaries for the walls. Can't move outside the boundaries. We also have a database object right here. If we do Control X, it'll save it. As you can see right here in my terminal, it says game saved. Let's try to load it. There I am again. Usually when you start the game, you start down here. So it saved my position up here. As we move on to the next room, here's the next room. It's going to be our puzzle room. This is where we push the rocks around and you try to figure out the puzzle of where to go on the pathway. As you can see, it's blocked by this boulder up here, at the very top. So we can't go there. We're going to go down here. We're going to push this rock out of the way. This one out of the way as well. This one. This out of the way on the stairs. And here's a chest. You can interact with the chest using E. You can also pick up the skittle using E. And it changes the entire background to the color of the skittle that we just had. Press I, it'll show the inventory. And we have the inventory right here. And yeah. Okay, right here I have I'm going to show you the other room that we have over here. As you can see, the background in this color is also green. We have the windows that are green, and we also have the bonsai tree and the mentor set that's also green. Thank you for watching. Bye.
All right, this is Luke, one of the developers of Chroma Quest. I did the start menu, pause menu, and the README file, and I worked a little bit on collisions. So here's the buttons of the start menu, and then here's the background for the start menu. Here's the while loop that runs the start menu. We draw the menu, and then this is checking if any of the three buttons are being clicked. And then once these are all clicked, we exit this while loop and enter the game loop right here. And then here's the button class behind all the buttons that returns, that detects clicks and returns clicks of the buttons. And so with the pause menu, we set pause equal to false, and these are some of the things that don't happen while they're being paused. While pause is happening, just making sure that things don't happen while the game is paused. And then here's the function that happens when pause is true. So I put a kind of blur over the whole screen right here. And then I put text on the screen that says game is paused, press P to resume. And while pause is true, starts out false, but while it is true, you gotta press P to make it true. And then if you press P while it's true, then it goes to false. And then here's all the other key presses. And they happen while not pause. Basically, while pause is false, you can do everything. This is the README page. This is the description of basically our game, some of the instructions and some of the details on the thing. This is the software demo video, some tools, some languages we use, some Pygame and CSV and datetime. Use those libraries with Python. Here's all of our host collaborators, useful websites, future things we can do, and things that we can add in the future. And that's all for me.
Hello, my name is Lizzie Canapari, and this is what I contributed to Chroma Quest. So this is our game file. This runs most of the game. And at the start of our project, we had a lot of input handling in the main game file, and it was causing some issues. So I created the input handler class. This is anytime a player presses a key or clicks on something, it goes through the input handler. So when you are moving with the WASD, pressing W moves you up. It also helps with interactions with NPCs and objects. So if you press on E, then you have your interactions, whether that's talking with a player or opening a chest. We also have things like inventory that's handled through the input handler. and tutorials as well, which I also contributed was the tutorial class. So with the tutorial class, this is telling the player how to play the game. So we have our how to move and also how to interact with an NPC. So when the player first loads the game, it says press WSD to move. And then as soon as the player gets near a NPC, it also tells the player to press E to talk to the NPC. And once the player is able to accomplish these tasks, the tutorial goes away. We also had a database for our game, which Porter made, and my job was to use the database he made to create save and load functions. So as we can see here, there's a save game and a load game, where this directly influences the database. So this is actually inserting the values into the database, and we use these in the game file. Here we have the save function and the load game function. What these do is it calls the functions in the database class and inserts the info from the running game. So when the player hits Control X to save the game, it keeps track of the player's position, it pulls the player's room number, and it pulls player's name, things like that. So when the player goes to load the game from the main menu, this pulls the information from the database file and it plugs those variables into the game so that when the game's loaded, it sets them to the state that was saved instead of the start of the game. And those are my contributions to Chroma Quest.
Oh, my name is Porter Bryan. I'm with the Skill Donors Group. I'm just going to go over really quick what my code was. First, I did inventory, database, dialogue, and NPC managers, among other things. First, we'll go over inventory. My inventory right here, we have a list of items. This is just to test the inventory code to make sure that was actually working. We put the items into the actual inventory. Here's the inventory class. We have we defined one row, 4 columns, and obviously the items. We have the box size really quick, and we have where the X and the Y would be on the screen. We might change this later. We don't know. Here's the drawing function for it, where it draws it on the screen. Here we have an add item function. If the slot has something in it, they don't already add it. If the slot already has an item, add the item. If the slot is empty, they don't add the item, or add the item, excuse me. We also have the notify, so tell the user that they can't add the item if there is an item in there. And we have the open function. I also worked on the database. We use a SQL Lite 3 database, which is a database that is just run on the computer. It makes a file called, for us, it'll be called game_data.db. It'll create this file if there's not one already. It'll create the tables necessary. It'll also create 3 tables. It'll create players, inventory, game saves. It'll create those tables. I can show you right now. On my last game that I opened up, here are the 3 tables: game saves, inventory, players. Here's the data that it saved. It saved my checkpoint X and checkpoint Y, which is just my location on the actual game. We have the save game, Control X is save, as you saw in the demonstration. We have load game, which is just a load button on the menu screen when you first open the game, and it returns these information to the user, which is the player data, the inventory data, and the checkpoint data, which we already went over. Here's a dialog .py file. This just talks about dialogue. So for our mentor or NPC, it's called mentor. Here's his dialogue, and it's separated by a comma. So every time you press E, it'll run through success and failure. It'll run through each one of these in his dialogue. We have the display bubble. This is the one that shows up at the very bottom of the screen. With the little image of the actual NPC. Here we have the process NPC dialog, so it'll go line by line, and it'll just return the line. Here's the actual NPC file. It'll hold all the animation frames right here in these couple global variables that we created. This is used to set up the animation frames, the current animation frames for each character display, and the character action. Here we just initialize the actual NPC. Here's the animation code for that. If we compare the NPC to the player.py file, they will look similar because we based the NPC.py after the player file. I'll show you right now really quick. Here we have the get X, get Y, we have the get animation, get frame, get action. If we go to NPC, we pretty much have the same thing: get frame, get action, get animation. We have the X and the Y, get X, get Y. And this will load the list. So we have a list above. It'll load to see if it'll actually be in the room. If the NPC is in the room, then it'll load these items: name, X, Y, and coordinates, size, image path, and the dialogue. Let's see. Dialogue image and the animation steps. That's pretty much all I worked on. Obviously, all of these are called into the game.py file. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.
Hi, I'm Jenna. I was our team graphic designer, so I created a lot of the visual assets that we ended up using, and then also I contributed a lot of code to the player class, most of the code to the object and foreground class, and then some little lines in other places, just here and there. One of my most notable contributions is the code that handles all of the animation. So this handles animation with the player, the NPC, and the objects that are animated. Not all of them are animated, but some of them are, like the tea table in the mentor side at the beginning, with the little steam in the cups that moves upwards. So the object class and the NPC class have code that is similar to this, although not exactly the same, similar to this beginning chunk at the player class, which handles the animations. Basically, there is a list that holds all of the animation frames for every single animation, all just in one list. And we get those animations from the sprite sheet for each character and object. This is the sprite sheet for our little chameleon sprite character, the one that you control on the screen. And if you look closely, what it is it's every frame, every single animation that the chameleon has put side by side next to each other. And then all in the same image. So this image is like really short. It's just as tall as the chameleon, but it is super long. This code right here uses a function in the sprite sheet class and then takes that image, that sprite sheet apart frame by frame and puts each of those frames in the animation list. And then the animation steps list keeps track of how many frames are in each animation. So like the walking animation has 4. The idle animation has 3, and then walking has 4. Basically, everything else after that has 4 frames besides the first one. And then with those, in the game file, we have time checks to see when the last animation frame was set. And then depending on how much time has gone by, it switches everything that has animations to the next frame. So it switches their image that is showing to the next frame in the list. And that's how frames are switched. It just cycles through those. But then how the animations are switched. So the different actions, that's done in a variety of different places. One of the main places is in the movement code for the player. Right here we have the different functions for move left, move right, move up, down, etc., stand still. The things that happened in those functions is first the velocity is changed, and then the position later on in the update function is changed based on what the velocity is at that time. But then also in the movement code, after the velocity is changed, the actions and the frame of that action is set for the player. So walking left, this would be action number 1 is the walking left action, and so it's set to the beginning of that action so that we can see the full one instead of starting the middle, which wouldn't be terrible, but we want to start at the beginning. And that's basically how the animation works in our code. I also contributed the loading function for the foreground class handles all of the objects, placing them and such. And then one of the biggest things in the foreground function is that it can load all of the objects that are listed in a JSON file. And it's pretty long because there's a lot of different kinds of objects that you can have in different kinds of groups that the objects can be in, depending on what their attributes are and how interactable they are and if they move or not. But those are the biggest things that I have done.
Hi there, this is Ryan. I'm one of the developers for Chroma Quest. I mostly worked on the backgrounds in the world itself, so things like the tile sets, the wall collisions, and room transitions. So basically just working on the environment. So in here we've got this load room function. What this does is it goes through room files. Each room has a specific number that gets loaded, and that loads a bunch of data about the room, such as NPCs, what tile set is used. Depending on the tile set that it gets, it'll go through this. It'll process the tile data. So it'll go through a CSV file like this that has a bunch of numbers. -1 represents empty space. Any other number represents a tile. So like this would be an example of a floor tile. So it goes through and it builds the world based on the CSV file. And then right after that, we've got this process doors data. And this does something similar to the tile data, but what it does is it goes through this list right here, which is a door object. And that's how players get from one room to another. Doors have data about where they lead and what they connect to. So all of that gets loaded in. And one thing I forgot to mention is in here, we have certain tiles that are obstacle tiles that are loaded so that the player runs into them. They can't just walk through a wall. So that gets added to a list right up here, just obstacle tiles. And then if we go into the player and look at the update function, I did some work in here as well with the collisions. So obstacle tiles is one of the things that gets passed in here. And this code will check the player's position against the obstacle tiles. And if it detects an issue or an intersection, it'll stop the player from moving forward. And that's pretty much everything about the world file. Thanks.